Welcome, seeker of hidden truths. You've been drawn here not by chance, but by the silent whisper of something ancient, an energy that has called out to countless souls through the mist of time. Tonight we speak not just of knowledge, but of awakening, of a power buried deep within your very spine, waiting, watching, rising. This is the story of Kundalini. Part 1. The Serpent Beneath the Spine. A Forgotten Fire. What if I told you that within your body lies a dormant force so vast, so divine, that when awakened it could unravel your very perception of reality? Not a myth, not a metaphor, but an ancient flame, coiled like a serpent at the base of your spine. In the East, they call it Kundalini, a Sanskrit word meaning coiled or circular, a sacred name that echoes from the Vedas and the Tantric scrolls whispered across Himalayan peaks and deep Indian forests. To speak of Kundalini is not merely to speak of energy. It is to summon the memory of a primal power, one that connects the human soul with the cosmos itself. Long ago, sages and seers saw this energy not with their eyes, but through inner sight. They described it as a sleeping goddess, wrapped 3.5 times around the Muladhara, the root chakra, just above the pelvic bone. She slumbers in stillness, waiting for the sacred call to rise. But what wakes her? And what happens when she stirs? Many believe Kundalini can be stirred through intense spiritual practices, deep meditation, pranayama, breath control, mantra repetition, and unwavering devotion. But make no mistake, this is no gentle breeze. When awakened prematurely or improperly, she can surge like lightning, tearing through the chakras with a fire that purifies, yes, but also burns. That's why many traditions warn, approach Kundalini not with curiosity but with reverence. The path she travels is the Sushumna, the central energy channel that runs along your spine. As she ascends, she awakens the 7 chakras, unlocking gifts and trials at each station. At the Manipura, you feel power. At the Anahata, compassion. At the Ajna, sight beyond sight. And if she reaches the Sahasrara, the crown, you dissolve. You are no longer just a body or a name. You become one with the all. But before we speak of ascension, we must understand the ground upon which this serpent rests. The root chakra, Muladhara, is not just a place of energy. It is the domain of survival, fear, stability. If your foundation is weak, Kundalini has no path to rise, and so the journey begins not with flight, but with grounding. Before enlightenment comes discipline, before awakening, purification. This is not just spiritual poetry. Throughout time, countless seekers have described the sensation of this awakening. Some speak of heat rising through the spine, others of a magnetic pull at the base. Some see visions, hear celestial tones, or even feel their body dissolve in waves of divine ecstasy. But just as many have felt overwhelmed, hallucinations, terror, illness, the fracturing of reality. Why? Because Kundalini is not here to comfort. She is here to transform. And transformation demands the death of the false. We are only at the beginning of this sacred journey. In the next part, we will descend deeper into the ancient origins of Kundalini, from the earliest Vedic scriptures to its echoes in Egyptian, Gnostic, and even Christian mysticism. You may start to see that this serpent has been slithering through human history far longer than you've ever imagined. Part 2. Echoes across ancient civilizations. From pyramids to catacombs, roll back the curtains of time and you will find the serpent coiled everywhere. In sandstone temples on the Nile, etched into Greek marble, winding through Babylonian seals, even fluttering as a feathered dragon across Aztec stone. Long before the word Kundalini emerged, humanity had already intuited a hidden fire spiraling up an inner axis. In Egypt, priests spoke of the Djed pillar, the divine backbone of Osiris. Each annual raising of the Djed festival was more than a harvest rite. It reenacted the surge of life force through the spine, lifting consciousness from earth to sky. Atop every pharaoh's brow gleamed the Uraeus cobra, Wadjet, poised to spring from the forehead exactly where Indian mystics placed the Ajna chakra. To wear that cobra was to proclaim, "My inner fire is awake. I see with the eye behind the eyes." Across the Mediterranean, the Greeks inherited this glyph of ascent. The rod of Asclepius, one serpent spiraling a staff, became medicine's emblem because healers knew that true cure rises from within. Hermes, the boundary breaker, brandished the caduceus, twin serpents climbing a winged wand, perfect mirror of Ida and Pingala weaving around Sushumna, crowned by feathered wings at the crown chakra. Gnostic texts later whispered of the Ophite rite. Initiates drew a serpent over their bodies in oil, guiding its imagined climb to ignite divine spark beyond the stars. Even early Christian mystics kept the symbol alive. When Luke writes of tongues of fire descending at Pentecost, or when desert fathers speak of a heat rising like honeyed flame in prayer, they echo the same ascent. The medieval image of Christ on the cross, arms outstretched along the vertical axis of Golgotha, became a living spine through which divine breath traveled from earth to heaven. Turn farther east and you meet the Chinese dragon, not a monster but a heavenly river of qi, coiling through the governor vessel and conception vessel in the microcosmic orbit. Taoist adepts taught that when this dragon completes its circuit, the golden elixir flowers behind the skull, another crown ablaze. Meanwhile, in the high Andes in Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl curled around pyramids, marrying earth's scales with sky-bird plumes, matter ascending to spirit. Aboriginal Dreamtime stories speak of the rainbow serpent rising from waterholes to sculpt the land, just as Kundalini sculpts the psyche. Why did cultures oceans apart paint the same hidden current? Some suggest lost Atlantean science, others Jungian archetype, but every myth reveals a shared intuition. Evolution is an inside job, staged along the ladder of the vertebrae. Archaeologist Maya Arundel once brushed dust from an ivory plaque in a Maltese hypogeum and gasped. The carving showed 7 little suns stacked on a serpent, crowned by a lotus. Carbon dated to 3200 BCE, it predates the earliest Sanskrit hymns, hinting that the map of chakras may be older than any surviving scripture. Yet symbolism alone is mere poetry, unless lived. Ancient mystery schools demanded ordeal, fasts, darkness retreats, herb elixirs, to loosen the ego's grip so that the current could rise without shattering the vessel. Egyptian initiates lay in the house of gold sarcophagus to simulate death. Greek bacchantes swirled in ecstatic dance. Taoists condensed breath into an embryo of light. All sought the same alchemy, refine the body until it can conduct heaven's voltage. Sometimes they failed. Legends speak of priests who went mad, alchemists who coughed blood, oracles who drowned in vision. These tragedies birthed the caution still voiced today: ground yourself, purify your motives, respect the serpent. Thread these myths together and a pattern emerges. Wherever humans sensed a spinal current, they also visualized a cosmic tree linking underworld earth and sky. Yggdrasil, the world tree, the Kabbalistic Sephirot. Your spine is that tree. Kundalini is its sap. When the sap is frozen, life feels brittle. When it flows, consciousness blossoms at each branch chakra until the crown bursts into limitless foliage. We stand, then, on the shoulders of forgotten civilizations, inheritors of a single occult diagram drawn in sand and stone across millennia. Knowing this, the modern seeker is no longer alone. She enters a lineage alive with cobras, dragons, ladders, and trees, all metaphors for the same thrust toward the infinite. In Part 3, we will shift from myth to microscope, peering into neuroscience, endocrine transmutation, and the mysterious biophoton flares that may accompany the serpent's rise. The ancient map meets 21st century lab, and the convergence is nothing short of electrifying. Part 3, the neurobiology of awakening, when spirit sparks flesh. What if every ancient myth was not simply symbolic, but anatomical? What if the serpent rising was not merely a vision, but an electrical storm igniting every synapse in your brain? As modern science peers into the subtle mechanisms of consciousness, we find surprising echoes of Kundalini's ancient path, woven into nerves, glands, and light itself. Let us begin with the spine. Within it flows not only bone and marrow, but an intricate highway of neural circuits. The Sushumna, described in yogic texts, runs astonishingly parallel to the central canal of the spinal cord. When Kundalini awakens, practitioners report tingling, heat, or light shooting upward, exactly what occurs when action potentials race along ascending tracts of the nervous system. Now consider the chakras, not as vague spiritual wheels, but as energy nexuses sitting near major nerve plexuses and endocrine glands. The Muladhara, or root chakra, lies at the base of the spine where the coccygeal plexus meets the adrenal glands, those twin factories of primal alertness. When Kundalini stirs, a flood of adrenaline often initiates a fight-or-flight response, paradoxically fused with stillness, alert and immovable. As the energy ascends, it ignites centers linked to digestion, solar plexus, cardiac rhythm, heart, and communication, throat, culminating at the ajna, or third eye, the pineal gland's realm. This tiny gland, nested between the hemispheres of the brain, has puzzled scientists for decades. It is filled with piezoelectric crystals and bathed in cerebrospinal fluid. Under the right conditions, darkness, breath retention, rhythmic pressure, it may emit faint photons, what some call biophotonic light. Could this be the inner light mystics have long spoken of? Could the serpent's climb stimulate the pineal, opening an internal cosmos of vision and insight? The crown chakra, Sahasrara, corresponds neurologically with the cerebral cortex's highest integration centers. When Kundalini reaches this point, subjects describe ego dissolution, cosmic unity, and timeless perception, terms now studied under psychedelic research. Psilocybin, DMT, and meditation all activate the brain's default mode network, DMN, loosening its grip. When the DMN collapses, so too does the illusion of separation. It is here the mystic meets the all, not in theory but in experience. But Kundalini is not only electric, it is also chemical. The endocrine system, governed by glands like the hypothalamus, pituitary, and pineal, releases hormones that alter awareness. Oxytocin, serotonin, melatonin, and DMT-like compounds may all surge during advanced meditation. Some yogis speak of a sacred nectar dripping in the back of the throat. Biochemists now trace this to the activation of the thalamic pineal axis, essentially the body's spiritual chemistry set. When stimulated correctly, this system can induce trance, bliss, or deep perception of symbolic vision. It is tempting to reduce Kundalini to neurology, but that would be a mistake. For just as electricity animates a lamp, it is the quality of the filament, the intention, the vessel, the soul, that determines what light emerges. Science can describe the fire, but only spirit explains why it burns. What's more, not all awakenings are peaceful. Neuroscience also reveals why some experience Kundalini crises. Sudden activation of brain regions can cause disorientation, insomnia, anxiety, even psychosis, especially if the nervous system is unprepared. That's why grounding practices, slow breathwork, and wise guidance are not optional, they are essential. Without structure, the serpent may overwhelm the vessel. Across research labs and sacred caves, a strange convergence is unfolding. Yogic sages and neurobiologists now meet in shared wonder. The maps are aligning, chakras with glands, nadis with nerves, breath with biochemistry. Kundalini is no longer just a whisper from the ancients. It is a frontier of consciousness science. And yet, with all our measuring, we still cannot bottle the mystery. The rise of Kundalini is not just a physiological event. It is a cosmic invitation, a turning inward toward the temple of the soul. In Part 4, we shall journey into the lived experience, the signs, the tests, the dark nights, and the divine breakthroughs that mark the real path of ascension. Because knowledge alone is not transformation, it is walking the fire that makes it real. Part 4, Signs, Struggles, and Surprises, the sacred unraveling of the self. So what does it feel like when the serpent stirs? This is the question whispered in meditation halls, uttered in hushed tones between seekers, and sometimes screamed into the silence of sleepless nights. Because when Kundalini awakens, the soul does not merely rise, it sheds. It begins with a whisper, barely noticeable, a pressure in the base of the spine, a subtle warmth in the sacrum, a dream that is far too vivid to dismiss. Then, as days pass, strange synchronicities begin to dance around you. Clocks repeating numbers, people arriving with uncanny timing, animals crossing your path and locking eyes as if they recognize you. The veil is thinning. Reality is no longer solid, it is speaking. The body becomes a theater for divine alchemy. You may feel waves of heat crawling up the back, spontaneous shaking or swaying, or a sudden urge to cry without reason. Ancient emotions rise, anger, grief, shame, not to harm you, but to be seen, felt, released. The serpent rises not just to bring power, but to purge. One day, a tingling may shoot from your root to your brow. Another day, your heart may crack open with such force, you sob for strangers, trees, or the moon. And yet, there is a strange bliss in the unraveling, as if some part of you is finally breathing. But be warned, this path is not lined with golden light alone. Kundalini is a divine fire, and fire always tests the vessel. Nights of insomnia may arrive, as if your nervous system is too electric to sleep. Dreams may become messages, half symbol, half mirror, Some days, your body may feel weightless, others, unbearably dense. You might feel disoriented in crowds, as if sensing 1,000 frequencies all at once. You may lose interest in trivial conversations, craving only truth. This is the sacred unraveling. Some call it the dark night of the soul, a stage where everything you once believed in begins to fall apart. Your identity shatters, your ambitions dissolve, even joy can vanish, replaced by an aching emptiness. But this is not punishment. It is the emptying of the old wineskin, so the nectar of the divine can pour in. You are not breaking, you are being rebuilt. And as the fire purifies, something begins to awaken deep within. Not just spiritual insight, but a remembering, a cellular knowing that you are not just human, but cosmic. You remember dreams you never dreamed. You feel the weight of lifetimes. You speak words you don't know, in languages your mouth has never studied. This is not imagination. This is activation. At this point, the soul is no longer seeking. It is responding. You find yourself meditating not because you should, but because silence calls you. You begin to hear your body like never before. Food becomes sacred. Nature speaks. Even pain feels like a doorway. Then come the gifts, some subtle, some immense. Intuition heightens. Your presence alone calms rooms. You speak truth, and others weep. You dream, and it comes to pass. Light pulses at your fingertips. Time bends around your thoughts. These are not to be flaunted. They are reminders of responsibility. The more you carry, the more you must bow. And through it all, the serpent continues to rise, not as an event, but a cycle. Every ascent is followed by integration, every blaze followed by stillness. This is not a one-time awakening, but a lifelong unfolding. The divine doesn't just strike once, it dances with you, step by sacred step. In Part 5, we will explore how to safely ground this energy through breath, discipline, devotion, and embodiment, so that your awakening becomes not a storm, but a sanctuary. Because true Kundalini is not chaos, it is divine order wrapped in mystery. Part 5, Grounding the Serpent, Turning Awakening into Embodiment. The fire of Kundalini, once stirred, is not to be feared, but it must be honored. Because awakening is not the end, it is the beginning of embodiment. And if the energy rises like lightning, it must also descend like rain, feeding roots, softening stone, anchoring the divine into the dust of your human life. So how do you ground the unseeable? How do you integrate an experience that seems to dissolve time, identity, and logic? The ancient masters always emphasized, without preparation, power is peril. Just as a temple must be built before housing the sacred idol, the body and mind must be prepared to hold the light of Kundalini. Grounding is not merely spiritual hygiene, it is survival. 1. The breath, anchor of the invisible breath, is the bridge between the seen and unseen. When the serpent coils or rises too fiercely, it is the breath that soothes her. Slow, deep, rhythmic breathing, especially belly breathing, calms the nervous system and guides the energy where it is needed. Techniques like alternate nostril breathing, nadi shodhana, box breathing, or long exhalations can stabilize the current. You are not forcing Kundalini, you are creating the conditions for her grace. Number 2, the body, your living altar. After awakening, some fall into the trap of neglecting the body, thinking the higher realms are all that matter. But the serpent does not ascend instead of the body, she ascends through it. Eat grounding foods, root vegetables, grains, warm-cooked meals. Walk barefoot on earth. Engage in movement that is slow and intentional. Yoga, tai chi, sacred dance. Rest when needed. The body is not a cage, it is the chalice. 3. The mind, discipline as devotion. Kundalini may awaken your mind, but without structure, that mind may spiral. Journaling helps you digest experience. Studying ancient scriptures provides context. Limiting stimulation, especially digital, gives your psyche time to absorb the shift. Meditation is not about quieting the mind into nothingness, but listening to the voice behind the noise. Devotion to discipline is devotion to the divine. 4. Sacred routine, ritual grounds. Reality awakening often comes with a collapse of routine, but rebuilding sacred structure is vital. Wake and sleep at regular hours. Begin the day with stillness or breath. End with gratitude or silence. Light a candle before meditation. Speak an invocation. Use prayer beads. Even simple acts, done with sacred attention, become anchors in the storm. Ritual is not superstition. It is architecture for the soul. 5. Humility, the great equalizer. As gifts appear, visions, intuitions, healing energy, so too does the danger of spiritual pride. The ego, clever as ever, may wear a halo and call itself enlightened, but Kundalini cares not for your titles or followers. Her only question is, do you serve the whole or yourself? True grounding is humility, bowing to the unknown, thanking the mystery, and walking softly with power. 6. Service. Channel the overflow. The final and perhaps most sacred form of grounding is service. When the current overflows, pour it into others. Share your story not to impress, but to inspire. Let your presence uplift, heal, teach, create, or simply listen. In serving others, you root the divine in the world. And this, perhaps, is the highest act of Kundalini, not to escape life, but to illuminate it. Through these practices, the wildfire of awakening becomes a steady flame. The serpent, no longer chaotic, curls around your spine in peace, radiating wisdom in every breath, every step. You are no longer just a seeker, you are a vessel. In Part 6, we will delve into the ultimate purpose of Kundalini, not just personal enlightenment, but the evolution of humanity itself. Because when one soul awakens, a ripple begins, and when many awaken, the world shifts. Part 6, Kundalini and Humanity's Evolution, the fire that connects us all. The story of Kundalini is not just about you. It never was. While it begins in the intimate chambers of your spine, it expands, like ripples on water, into something far greater, the awakening of humanity itself. You see, every time a soul awakens, it radiates change, not just through words or deeds, but through frequency. The human aura, once dormant, begins to pulse with new harmonics. You speak, and hearts remember. You walk into a room, and its atmosphere shifts. This is not magic. It is resonance. Ancient cultures knew this well. In India, enlightened beings were called Jyotirlingas, pillars of light. In Egypt, Neters walked among men, vibrating so high that their presence alone could bless or break. The Mayans believed in Nahuals, humans whose soul fire had merged with cosmic forces. These were not gods. They were humans who had completed the circuit, allowed Kundalini to rise, and then returned to serve. Because the final step of awakening is not transcendence, it is return. Many think enlightenment is escape into bliss, into stillness, into formlessness. But true Kundalini does not lift you out of the world. It roots you within it, deeply, fiercely, lovingly. You do not dissolve into light and forget the world. You become light and carry the world with you. The mystics knew this. The awakened soul is not one who avoids suffering, but one who transforms it. Pain becomes fuel, shadows become teachers, and through the inner alchemy of Kundalini, your scars become portals. You are no longer afraid of the dark, because you have walked through it and lit a lamp. And then you reach others. Your awakening is not solitary. It weaves into the quantum field, into the collective psyche. A parent who heals their trauma breaks ancestral chains. A teacher who lives their truth inspires generations. A stranger who smiles with awakened eyes reminds someone that grace still exists. In this way, Kundalini is not just a force. It is a network, a divine circuitry that links soul to soul, across time, across geography. Every act of courage, every breath of mindfulness, every prayer sent into silence, weaves golden threads into this grid. And perhaps this is what we were always meant to do. Not to become gods, but to become whole. To remember the divinity within the dust. To awaken not just for ourselves, but for those who cannot yet awaken. To become anchors of light in a trembling world. To become fully human, in the most divine sense of the word. The fire of Kundalini is not yours to keep. It is a torch. You carry it for a time, and then, when the time is right, you pass it on. So if you have felt the stirrings of something ancient, something powerful, something holy, know this. You are not alone. You are part of a great rising, a sacred remembering, a return not to heaven but to the heart. And this is the true purpose of Kundalini.